now let me move on to our fourth and final speaker so that we can get into the meat of the discussion. P.L.O, it's your chance to lay out your thoughts. Karibu.
Thank you very much. Let me thank those who have spoken before me and remind us that interference in Africa started with slavery. When slavery had lost its value, it graduated into colonization. And that is the context in which Berlin must be seen when the European powers sat in Berlin and divided the continent of Africa into spheres of influence. When colonization had lost its luster through a combination of certain realities and agitation from the continent, we regained our independence. But as John Henry Clark, that great African-American, said, we regained independence by mimicking European governance systems. And he rightly says, no African country will ever succeed on the basis of those systems. After that, the neo-colonial project was instituted. And all of us will remember Kwame Nkrumah's book, Neo-Colonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. And he there says, the most dangerous. We are now in a neo-colonial stage when the European powers are at their most diabolical, when the Americans are at their most diabolical. And it's not lost on me that they'll be meeting in Hiroshima next week as the G7. And how do they interfere? They interfere militarily. They ensure that you in the military are trained in Sandhurst, are trained in West Point, so they affect your mind. They interfere diplomatically, sometimes through gunboat diplomacy. And that is why you see sometimes your typical European ambassador treats our heads of states in a condescending manner. They interfere through institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank. They interfere by ensuring that our economic infrastructure is beholden to theirs through dollarization. They interfere through education. They interfere by influencing our processes, by lending us advisors who tell us what to do. The neo-colonial project is alive and well, and it is at its most dangerous, and we Africans must smell the coffee. If we don't, they are going to continue to interfere. How else do they interfere? Through NGOs, Danida, CEDA, UK Aid, USAID. These are Trojan horses that are introduced into our countries for the purpose of influencing our processes. And they infiltrate our institutions. Right now, if you look at the African Development Bank, look at the shareholding. It's Americans, it's Germans, it's Japanese, it's the French. And the Europeans have done their bit. They also interfere through post-colonial institutions, the Commonwealth of independent nations. They are not sovereign states, former French-speaking nations. These are the instruments that they interfere through. And how do we then deal with this situation? We Africans must now begin to recognize, and this was recognized as early as 1963, and the chair of the commission is here. They'll be celebrating 60 years in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And 60 years ago, on the 24th day of May, Kwame Nkrumah warned us. He said, if we are not united, they are going to interfere with us militarily. They are going to interfere with our economy. They are going to interfere with our agriculture. They are going to interfere with our health. Our duty, and I hope that when African heads of states and government meet in Addis next week, It will not be another jamboree at which pro forma speeches are read. I hope it will be an occasion to give meaning to Africa Agenda 2063. I hope it will be an occasion to give meaning to Africa Continental Free Trade Area. I hope it will be an occasion to revitalize the Malabo Declaration, the Maputo Declaration, the Yamoussoukro Declaration. In other words, we Africans, as I conclude, we Africans must stop operating in silos. Rwanda alone will not confront them. Burundi alone will not confront them. But if we go through the regional bodies and ultimately the African Union, we may indeed succeed in putting away this bulwark. And remember, it is no longer just Europe. There is a new scramble for Africa. The Chinese are here. The Turks are here. The Qataris are here. All of them are coming back. And the military bases that you see here is telling you that if you don't behave, we are going to use force. Sometimes I wish, and I'm saying this seriously, that we too had a nuclear weapon, because that is what Europe and America understands. Thank you.
Prof, thank you very much indeed. For now, maybe this is just a we'll declare a ceasefire for the moment. Now, thank you, Prof. Let me throw this question, and I'll come to you, Brian. I think Lumumba P.L.O. took us through those stages. It's been 60 years plus we've had this. We're actually calling it the enduring destabilizing factor. Why is it so difficult to really tackle this issue? Why is it taking us so long?
I think the most fundamental challenge is not white supremacy. It's black inferiority and the abiding appetite amongst the black elite to function on the basis of white embrace. Number one. If we ourselves, even our thieves, are not patriotic, when they steal from Africa, they invest in Europe. They don't believe. The minister said, fix our own governance system. The people in charge of governance system steal and invest elsewhere as an indictment or an affirmation of their own incompetence and incapacity. But the second bit is that I think both His Excellency Moussa Faki, Professor Lumumba, and the minister indicated, when you grow a disconnect between the people who give you legitimacy, who are the ultimate resource for the transformation of any nation, when you grow a disconnect between your culture, Amilcar Cabral said, every revolution is first a cultural revolution. A people must believe in themselves. That way they're able to produce both citizens and leaders who are not only patriotic and competent, but that are future-focused and that are regenerative. Unfortunately for us, we have constantly killed three forms of assets. First asset, we kill our babies and our young people by never exposing them. And Rwanda is an exception to this, to what it means to govern and what it means to negotiate, what it means to compete. Number two, in all our countries, anybody, the age group of the people sitting at this table, when you are out of government, you are finished. The state has absolutely no use of the experience, the expertise, and the resources. We are constantly going elsewhere to look for experts that we either have in the diaspora or we have in our countries. The inability to build, retain, use our own local expertise and experience. The third is that we have created everything to be so leader-centric that most of our citizens either wait for God or wait for the leader or wait for foreigners. And the day must come in Africa where Pan-Africanism is Pan-Africanism of the people. No matter how brilliant institutions are, continental or regional, as long as they are not nourished by the ideas of African intellectuals, African artists and activists. But there is hope. Many of you may not see it as hope. The dominance of Afrobeat and Afropop in the world today, sending a message. If that can be used as a vehicle of cultural regeneration, if what the young people have been able to do with tech can be used as a way of reimagining, then what we're talking about as a phenomenon will end. The third is that we can't keep sending all our people. I know that is maybe brain gain for some people. We can't keep sending all our young people to Europe, to America, and elsewhere without creating pathways back. Why? Frantz Fanon said they realized that the empire or the center came and took the best from amongst us and took them to their best institutions, and they emptied them of their own culture and their own sense of being, and they filled them with ideas of how to be good Europeans and Americans. And when they returned, their kith and kin realized that their children had not come back. What had come back were echoes of the empire. You and I, having had the opportunities to serve outside our continent, when we return, we are not trying to establish little Europe's, little France, little America. There must be an authentic way. That's why Rwanda's revolution is not only leadership, it is homegrown solutions, not for Rwanda only, but for the whole world, not just for Africa. We cannot assert ourselves culturally, intellectually, spiritually, as long as we are leprous and dependent.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much indeed. Honorable Minister, I'm going to turn to you now. We're laying this problem firmly at the feet of the foreigner. But what is our responsibility as Africans? Brian mentioned the issue of patriotism. How we also carry the blame. We are the people who are complicit in all this. What are your thoughts on this?
I think I already mentioned, I already said something about this. Foreign interference is real on our continent. It was here during the colonization time and even after the independence. But we cannot sit here and keep blaming others without ourselves. We are just able to analyze and see that foreign interference has done bad to our continent. But now we know. We should do something about it. And we need to start by owning our own development, as I mentioned earlier. We need to put in place the right policies for our continent. We need to build regional integration and later on continental integration. We have the Agenda 2063 for the African Union. We know what we need to do, and we should just do that. So blaming others, it's fine, but we need to stop and start just addressing the issues we know very well. And we cannot neither close the continent and consider that all others are bad. This is not possible. It is not even realistic. We need to work with others, and we need to go and train in America, in Europe, and wherever. But we need to train there. We need to study there, knowing very well that we are doing that for our continent, for our countries to benefit from those trainings. So we need to be conscious that we need to develop our own countries and our own continent. We cannot keep blaming everybody else except ourselves. Because we have, the diagnosis is there. We know our problem. We know the solution. We need to implement it. And as I mentioned earlier, we just need to own our development. We need to have the courage to adopt the right policies and to implement them. And we need also to know, to develop our capacity to deal with foreigners who are coming to our countries. If Americans have USAID, if others have SIDA, if others have NABER or whatever, it is good. Now it is upon me, upon Rwanda, upon any African state to know the better way to use these mechanisms which are there for the benefit of our own people. We should be able to tell these partners that this is the development path we want to take. If we want to work with us, this is the way we want to go. And to be able to orient them to own it. Otherwise, if we consider that they are there, and when they come to us, we just need to accept whatever they bring to us, this is not their problem, it is our problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me turn to you, Chairperson. Now, we're here fighting huge global forces, international financial systems that are skewed against us, and you've laid out some steps, some of the instruments that are available and open to Africa to try, including integration, to try and address this problem. But I wonder if, as a continent, we can't produce a passport for all Africans, how are we going to deal with these other huge things if we can't even produce a paper document that is acceptable in all our countries?
Oui, je crois qu'après 60 ans, ne serait-ce qu'en prenant la date de naissance de l'OUA, il y a 60 ans, je crois que c'était un moment pour faire le bilan. On l'a fait au 50e anniversaire, c'est là où nous avons adopté l'agenda 2063. Le problème, c'est d'être conséquent et de mettre en œuvre ce que nous avons décidé. Il y a des décisions, il y a des institutions, il y a des programmes, il y a même un agenda qui sont très bien élaborés. Les problèmes résident sur la mise en œuvre. La question du passeport, la question de la libre circulation des biens et des personnes. Il y a un protocole qui a été signé depuis bientôt 10 ans, 2014, sur la libre circulation. Jusqu'aujourd'hui, on n'a pas eu 15 États qui l'ont ratifié pour qu'il entre en vigueur. 10 ans après. On est venu ici, on a signé sur cette place-là la zone de libre-échange continentale. Comment on peut implémenter la zone de libre-échange continentale si on ne permet pas aux Africains d'aller et venir? La libre circulation, c'est ça l'une des contradictions à laquelle on fait face avec nos États membres. Je crois que c'est une question de responsabilité. Aujourd'hui, on sent un divorce entre les populations et les leaderships. La population est majoritairement jeune, elle veut le changement, elle veut vivre. Et donc, je crois que nous sommes à des moments où il faut être conséquent. On connaît le contexte dans lequel nous nous trouvons. On sait ce que nous avons subi. Il n'y a pas de pardon. En ce moment, nous sommes avertis. C'est pour cela que la responsabilité première est la nôtre. La question de la bonne gouvernance. Plus le leadership est en relation directe et en conformité avec les aspirations de ses concitoyens, mieux il est respecté et mieux il peut mettre en œuvre ce qu'il aura été décidé. Donc, c'est là où se situe la vraie problématique. Sur le plan global, nous sommes un continent, nous sommes aujourd'hui certains que les États africains pris individuellement ne peuvent pas peser. Nous avons des communautés économiques régionales, SADC, ECOWAS, ECAS, IGAD, etc. Nous avons, dans le cadre de la réforme, depuis 2019, instauré un sommet de coordination chaque année. Cette année, c'est le 18 juillet, il va se tenir à Nairobi, au Kenya, où les responsables des différentes communautés économiques régionales et la Commission de l'Union africaine et le bureau de la conférence se retrouvent pour analyser la situation économique et de développement dans le continent. Mais il y a une contradiction entre ce qu'on décide et ce qu'on met en œuvre. Et le cas du passeport est l'un de ces points. Même en utilisant nos passeports nationaux, il suffit de ratifier cette convention, ce protocole, pour que je puisse prendre mon passeport, aller dans n'importe quel pays africain, rentrer dans ces territoires, m'installer et faire des affaires, par exemple. On ne peut pas faire du commerce si on n'assure pas la libre circulation des biens et des personnes. Et donc, l'un des problèmes auxquels nous sommes confrontés aujourd'hui, c'est la mise en œuvre de ce qu'on aura décidé, et notamment le protocole sur la libre circulation des biens et des personnes. On a encore moins de 10 États. Heureusement, le Rwanda fait partie des premiers États à avoir ratifié ce protocole. Et chaque sommet, on rappelle aux États qu'il faut ratifier cet accord, ne serait-ce que pour mettre en œuvre la zone de libre-échange continentale. Nous ne sommes pas une contradiction près, malheureusement.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. PLO, your thoughts as well on why it has taken us so long?
Yeah, I'll answer your question, but I must also respond to what I hear the minister saying. First of all, when we talk the way we do, we are not blaming anybody. The impact of European and American and Russian and Chinese interference is a raw wound. It is not something that is in the past. It is something that is happening as we speak. And therefore, when we speak to it, we are speaking to it to warn ourselves of the reality. When we speak about the Danidas and the NGOs, these are bodies whose raison d'etre is to ensure that we remain in a perpetual state of begging. That is what we are doing to warn ourselves. And we are not for 1 minute saying that we will shut ourselves out from the rest of the world. What we are saying is that we must define how we engage with the whole world. And we are saying that as individual countries, we are weak, and the rest of the world wants to operate and to deal with us in our weak state. The United States of America are dealing with Rwanda on second-hand clothing. Rwanda cannot resist them. Burundi cannot. Kenya cannot. Uganda cannot. But if we are East Africa with a population of 300 million, we can. If we are SADC, we can. If we are ECOWAS, we can. So this is what we are saying. And we are saying further that going forward, we must also recognize our internal weaknesses. And what is our weaknesses? Chinua Achebe said it very well. The problem of Africa is simply and squarely one of political leadership. The rank of many political leaders in Africa are thieves. Let's call them by their name. They are thieves. They are individuals who are not interested in the interest of this country. And as long as we continue electing such individuals into positions of power across Africa, they are going to be manipulated. What then is the responsibility of the citizenry? The responsibility of the citizenry is to make demands. The chairman here, I hope he has received the several letters that I have written to him. I've written several letters to his organization, talking about the role of the African Union in peacemaking. I wrote to the chairman only last week about the situation in Sudan, saying we must solve our own problems. And I want to see a crusading African Union, so that it's not the Americans and the Saudi Arabians who are summoning them to Jeddah. It should be in Addis Ababa. In a nutshell, Joe, what I'm saying is that we have a responsibility to ourselves, both at the leadership level and at levels of the civic society. We must be engaged in a positive manner, and we must keep on shouting without being diplomatic, because diplomacy is lulling us into a false sense of security. And lastly, I want to say this. When foreign powers come, we must always be reminded of these goodies that they bring to us. It used to be said of the Trojan War that even when the Greeks bear a gift, they do not mean well. They never mean well. And the sooner we say it, recognizing the external threat, recognizing the domestic weaknesses, the safer we are. Right now, as I conclude, there is a group of experts going around East Africa, collecting views about the constitution of East Africa. I've just written to them this morning. They are leaving Kenya If you ask 10 Kenyans, possibly only one knows they're in Kenya. Then they will be going to Burundi. If you ask your typical African about Africa Agenda 2063 out of 10, if 2 know about Africa Agenda 2063, you'll be lucky. If you ask them about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area 10, if 2 know, you'll be lucky. In other words, we are not doing well. And I'm going to be blunt at these functions. If you ask the chair of the African Union, who funds the African Union, possibly 60% of the budget is externally funded. He who pays the piper calls the tune. That is the reality of the world. We must begin to pay for our own things in order to be understood and to be respected. Thank you.
Thank you.